Hi, I'm Lisa from Frogginette Knitting Patterns. Today we're going to talk about short rows. Now I don't know why, but a lot of knitters get intimidated by short rows, and a lot of the times if they see that a pattern features short rows, they might just think that it's too difficult for them. And I'm wondering if maybe it has to do with the fact that they don't quite understand what short rows are. What exactly are short rows? Well, like the name implies, they are rows that are not full. They're shortened rows. And why would you want to use shortened rows? You want to do that when you're trying to knit a wedge. Why would you want to knit a wedge? For example, if you look at a regular t-shirt, or let's say a crew neck, a pretty high-fitting t-shirt that you buy in a store, like this one, for example, you can see that the back is higher than the front. There's about an inch to an inch and a half difference. And that's because human beings are not shaped symmetrically from front to back. See, if you look at me from the side, you see that I will want something that goes higher up here, but that goes lower around the front. If you have the same height at the back that you do at the front, then you're going to feel strangled. If I look at this cardigan, the front is lower than the back, so it will sit properly around the neck. It won't choke the wearer. So if we look at this sweater like this, as if we were just starting to knit it from the top down, let's look at it like this. So you would have started with the ribbing, and then you would have worked this zone here in stockinette. And you can see that it's kind of a wedge, like this. So you have your ribbing, and then you have your wedge position here, and this shape will achieve that longer area here where you have your back neck. And this is where you want to position your short rows. Now, this is what we've got. So to work the short rows in this shape, you start here, you just worked your neckline, and then you go around. I'm just following this red line here. It's going to show you what I'm doing. You just go around, round, 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 but you don't go all the way to the end of your row. What you're going to do is you're going to turn to the wrong side and go the other way, go back where you came from. So what happens here at this turning point depends on what technique of short rows you're using. I like to use German short rows. Knitters use different techniques. You could use the wrap and turn technique. You can use the yarn over short rows. You can use Japanese short rows. There's many different ways to work this. So once you've turned to the wrong side, you go back and you go, 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 go until you've reached the same point. This is supposed to be the same turning point, so the same distance here as you had here from the edge. Same turning point, but this time you're on the wrong side. So you turn back to the right side. And again, how you do this depends on which technique of short rows you're using. Now you're back on the right side, and you go this way and you go this way all around until you're here, actually. And here you have to deal with this. You have to pick up the wrap if you worked wrap and turn, or resolve the double stitch if you've worked German short rows. there's a way to deal with this area that will ensure you don't get a hole, because if you just ignore this, in stockinette at least, you'll end up with a hole. So here we resolve this, and we go past this point by a few stitches. And that depends on the pattern and what the designer is trying to achieve. So you've passed this, you've gone a few stitches, you're on the right side, and now you turn again to the wrong side. And you go all the way to the other side. Again, you pass this, deal with it in some way, pass it by the same amount of stitches, same number of stitches, and then you turn to the right side again. And you go, and you do the same thing, still a little bit further, and you go all around, a little bit further, same amount of stitches, and then you turn, and then you go, deal with the last one, and then here you go all the way to the edge this time. You finish your row, so you go this way, and now we're gonna go back to full rows. We put them in green. Green means full, so you go, 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 and all the way to the other edge, and you're done. So by working these short rows, you have achieved what you wanted, which is more rows at the back and fewer rows in the front of your cardigan. It's exactly the same, by the way, if you are working on a sweater. So it's exactly the same principle. But the short rows themselves are always worked, that portion in red is worked flat. So you insert sort of a portion here that's knit flat before and after the portions that are worked in the round. Now you'll see that here I started working shorter rows and then I gradually made them longer. You could also do the reverse, in particular if you're working from the bottom up. If you're working from the bottom up, you would first work these rows, the longer ones, and then progressively make them shorter. I mean, there's no rule of what you're supposed to do here. Some designers might prefer to work the longest ones first and then go shorter when they're working from the top down. It really depends on what kind of look you're going after, but in general, this is the way I would prefer to do it. Now, the wedge that you worked in the example I just gave you was put right underneath this neckline here. But if, let's say you have a patterned yoke, something's happening immediately under the neckline, you know, it could be color work or cabling or something a little bit intricate, you can choose either to put your short rows before doing the patterning or incorporate it somehow into the patterning, or you could also put it lower in the yoke, perhaps just before separating the body from the sleeves. So in this case, you would have the wedge perhaps, I'm exaggerating, of course, this is not, you know, the actual size of the wedge, but just so you see, you could have the wedge here or even lower, or you could split it in different parts. You could split the wedge into different sets of short rows separated by normal rows, full rows, or rounds in this case. So you can put this wedge further down in the yoke, which will also have the effect of lengthening the back yoke, the back neck, compared to the front here. Now, short rows can be used for many items of clothing, including socks, women's sweaters when you need to shape for the bust. They can be used also for the high-low hemline that you see sometimes, where the front of the sweater is shorter than the back. There's many different ways to incorporate short rows. Now, another item of clothing that needs to be not symmetrical front to back is pants. So these pants are pajama pants, and I don't know if you can see this, but you know that the back is always going to be a bit higher than the front, and that's naturally to accommodate the butt. So in order to do that with knitting, if you're knitting a pair of pants, especially if it's for the baby, where there's even more of a discrepancy between the front and the back because of the diaper, and even more so if it's cloth diapers, right? You want to have short rows at the back. See, here I created a wedge in the seat area of these pants to create this higher back. I mean, you could also just, keep the front and the back the same length and just make the back long enough, but then the front will be way too long, and the pants will arrive under the arms almost if you want your diaper to be fully covered. So short rows are really very important, I think, when you make especially baby pants. Now, you can avoid using short rows. For example, you can see that on this sweater I have a higher back neck and a lower front neck, and I don't have short rows here. Now, how did I do that? Well, I simply used garter stitch here and stockinette stitch at the back. Just by virtue of garter stitch having a different row gauge, you can see that the fabric will not grow the same way as you're working your rows. So this distance will be naturally shorter than the same amount of rows worked in stockinette. And this is true for other stitch patterns that tend to be denser, like this. And I've used that many times in my patterns. It's kind of a fun design thing, using the properties of something to your advantage. I love that. Now, in terms of how to work them, there's many different ways, and everybody has their own preferred way usually. I myself have for the past few years exclusively used German short rows because I think that they're extremely easy, non-fiddly to work, and they're very satisfying to work because they're almost invisible. And I have come up with a way to work them also in the round so that they're invisible. So you should check out the video that will appear in the upper right corner of your screen if you are interested in my trick. I hope this video helped demystify short rows a little bit. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.